Good morning. My name is Anita Esino, CEO of OML Africa. For those of you who may be joining me for the first time, this is our HR at Work Roundtable series. We're only doing 3 of these, plus one which I do end of the year with my HR group on reporting and strategy. So thank you for joining me. Ola is actually my co-host. I think he was having a slight problem. Hopefully he'll join at some point and bring contribution. So just to explain that, the virtual roundtable is a discussion, okay? So it's not just me talking. What I'm doing is I'm going to be facilitating, putting the questions, and if you want to contribute, either raise your hands or you put it in the comments box. And then I can unmute you, or I can read out the comments if you write it in the chat box. So just so that we are all on the same page, you see in front of you, if you're not, this is your first time using Zoom, there's a chat box, and then there's also under the more, you'll be able to, if you click there, you'll be able to raise your hands and so on, all right? So that you can participate. So roundtable means we're having a conversation. It's not the usual kind of, we're just sharing insights. The other thing is that I have got some polls. So when I activate the polls, it will flash in front of your screen and then you just vote, all right? And then I'll read out the responses to the polls. Okay, so let's get started. I think it'll be good, being as this is supposed to be a conversation and informal, if everyone just kind of introduce themselves in the chat box. Maybe just tell us your name, your organization, say hello, just so that people can know who other people who are on there. Because I know we are all in the same networks and everything. So it's always a good opportunity to introduce ourselves. So say hello in the chat box, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so today we're talking about how to stop talent, losing talent through bad management. And actually, I decided it was a different topic I was going to do for the first one, but I decided on this one because, you know, it's been coming up a lot in some of the work that we're doing, and is actually a big deal to some organizations. And I think that when you get into the conversation about this, it's usually that the HR is not addressing the issue, or the HR addresses the issue depending on who it is, etc. So I thought that it would be a good idea for us to have a conversation on how to address this issue, because talent management has become a very big thing for all of us at the moment in a new normal. And we need to make sure that we're not losing talent because of bad managers or leadership. And so that's what we're going to talk about, all right? So it's very short because it's a discussion. There's not a lot of slides. It's more a conversation. So I'll just start off with just a synopsis of this conversation. So we know that if you practice exit interviews, you will know that people will be telling you the reasons that why they are leaving. Thank you, all of you who are introducing yourself. I hope everyone's going to read, and I'll have a look at it as we go along at some point. So we know that in our exit interviews, we ask people to fill in our exit interview, and we know that a lot of the time we have scenarios like this. If the person is leaving, they may be very comfortable to tell us the truth as to why they're leaving. Other people won't. They'll just tell you other reasons. And sometimes if you do the exit interview after they've left, some people will respond because now they've left, so they don't care, they're not worried about anything, so they're likely to be much more honest with you. And usually that particular issue is around the management styles. So if your exit covers questions around how they were managed, what they thought of the leadership, etc., usually people don't like to respond on that. They'll respond on all the other factors on the exit, but this is precisely the information we need in order to develop our managers, because you've all heard the saying as practitioners, people leave their managers, right? And we know that this is important because the managers spend a lot of time with the teams, and if they are not managing them well, knowing how long and how hard it is for us to find talent, it's a problem. And we will obviously begin to see that as we go along. So really the synopsis here is that looking at the issues, discussing the issues, and then coming up with a way forward to address the issues. So that HR, these are some of the value adding things. Every time I engage, I'm always reminding you that we've got to do activities and initiatives that impact the bottom line. When we get this under control, there are bottom line value adding that we're adding. We're saving on recruitment, we're retaining top talent, we're developing good leaders to develop future leaders, we're increasing employee morale, we're reducing absenteeism. All these things are value adding because they save money, right? They save cost, okay? And they make our organizations better. So this is, and then so when it comes to your end of year report or your quarterly reports, and you have to report on what HR has achieved, you'll be able to pull on some of this information and show how much money you saved or how much your initiative has improved or impacted the bottom line. But if we don't address these things, then we tend to kind of lose out, okay, in adding value. So when we're talking about bad managers, what do we mean? I actually went looking for definitions, and I can share with you that it was a nightmare. There isn't a precise definition, but what people are describing are the characteristics of bad managers. So I picked some of them. So number one, undesirable leadership traits that causes friction between supervisors and employees. Can you identify with any of this? Hiring people who don't have the interpersonal skills to be managers. Do you agree? Do you use that as a definition for bad managers? A bad manager is one who does not clearly define for employees their responsibilities. A manager who insists on doing everyone the right way when really it's their way. Do you have such managers in your organizations right now? Not open to new ideas, the manager who is quick to shoot down new ideas instead of being open to possibilities. Right. They do not involve people in decision-making and improvement. Do you have managers like that? They don't develop their teams. They are unsupportive. Do you have managers like that? Now, before we go into this scenario, I want to launch the first poll. And the first poll, right. In the first poll, I'm asking you, have employees left your organization because of bad managers? So it's a simple yes or no you're going to launch. I've not given you any other options because I want you to just respond. Is a yes or no? Have employees left your organizations because of bad managers? Okay. So I'm launching the poll. It should flash on your screen and you just vote. All right. So I've launched it now. I give you a minute to respond, then I'll end the poll. So I've launched it. You're answering yes or no. Have employees left your organization because of bad managers? You simply click yes or no, and then I will tell you the response of the survey once I end the poll. So I'll give you a minute, everybody a minute just to respond. Okay. Please do not abstain. If you abstain, it's just because you're not collecting exit data. It doesn't show who said what. It just gives you the vote, so you can freely vote. Okay, so I can tell you that as of now, so far, based on those of you who've responded, we have 94% saying yes, employees have left the organization because of bad managers, and only 6% saying no. So I'll let it run. It's now 11% saying no, 89% saying yes. So I'll give you another few minutes. And then I will close the poll. Okay, so we've got another 30 seconds and then I'll close the poll. So far, the results show 90% of you are saying that employees have left your organizations because of bad managers, and 10% are saying no, employees have not left the organization because of bad managers. Okay, so a few more minutes and I'll end the poll. So ending the poll, the final results is that 86% of you say that employees have left your organization because of bad management, and 14% of you have said no, they haven't left because of bad management. Okay, fantastic. So that tells us a lot, right? 86% of us. I'm going to share the results with you so you can see. It should flash up on your screen. Okay. All right. So you can see that this is important, right? This is a good, important topic that we need to be talking about. Okay, so to get us into the conversation of discussion, what I have done is to have a scenario which I'm going to read. As I read the scenarios, kindly make your points and notes and discussion points, because when I finish, then I'll open up and then we're going to discuss the whole situation here, all right? I feel a scenario is always a better way to form conversations than to just be asking questions. So here we go. So Mary just resigned. Mary had been with your company for just 2 years and was an excellent employee. As the HR manager, you hate to see promising talent leave, especially someone like Mary, who was a high performer and had the potential to be a senior leader in the organization. What is even more worrying is this is becoming apparent. Mary is this is becoming supposed to be regular or something like that. Mary is the third employee who has quit in the past year. And ironically, they all reported the same manager, Jack. During your exit interview with Mary, it became apparent that all these individuals did not quit the company. They left because they couldn't work with Jack. Jack has been with the organization almost since the company was founded over 20 years ago and possesses decades of company knowledge, which made Jack an invaluable asset to the company. Although brilliant, Jack is abrasive and even borderline abusive. Because Jack is smart and has seen it all, it's a challenge for Jack to exercise patience for others who may not be as quick to grasp ideas and perform to Jack's expectations. Jack has been known to chastise employees publicly and disregard the opinions of others. He often breaks instructions, barks, meaning shouting instructions at team rather than coach, engage them in conversation. And during the pandemic, when this employee needed more empathetic manager, Jack continued to lead in a draconian manner, which further alienated and disengaged the team. Jack is perceived as an indispensable to the company. Senior management never addressed the bad manager issue with Jack and simply allowed Jack to be Jack, right? In the past years, when it was easy to hire replacements, it wasn't an issue for the HR. However, with the number of resignations and the transparency of social media portals like LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn, it has been increasingly difficult to find quality candidates to work for Jack. When there are job openings internally in Jack's department, there are no or few internal applicants. Clearly, Jack's reputation as a challenging manager is well known throughout the company. Stop. And I'm just wanting to make a note that Jack can also be the CEO or the founder of the company who believes they are offered immunity and allowed to be a bad manager. It can be the CEO's son, friend, daughter, or wife. So Jack doesn't have to just be a normal manager. It could be any of these positions. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to just digest and read through a little bit more. Sorry for my typos. And then we are going to discuss this scenario. So I'm going to give everyone about a minute just to get your thoughts around the situation. So we want to get our thoughts around the situation, and then we're going to discuss the situation. from the HR. So you are the HR of this company, and this is the situation. You just lost another talent, Mary, and it's all because of Jack's bad management. But because Jack is seen as invaluable, literally his abusive and bad behavior, bad leadership is going unaddressed. All right. So have a few minutes to think about it, and then we're going to talk about it. Okay, so everyone's had a few minutes to have a look at this. So I'm going to move on to the questions, all right, for us to discuss. Now, before I do that, actually, I want to do my second poll. And in this poll, I'm asking you, have you ever had to deal with a bad manager? Okay, so I want you all to answer. I'm going to launch the poll on your screen now. So it's going to pop up so you can answer. So it should come up on your screen. Have you ever had to deal as an HR manager, HR officer, HR director in your HR, even as a manager, you may have to deal with other colleagues. Have you had to deal with bad managers? All right. For your answers. So yes or no is intentionally yes or no, because I want you to be decisive. Yes or no, have you had to deal with a bad manager in your capacity as the HR? Okay, so the polls are showing so far 80% of you are saying that you've had to deal with a bad manager, and 20% of you are saying no, you've not had to deal with a bad manager. Okay, so again, it's 2 minutes, so you've got about 45 seconds before I close. So please vote. Have you had to deal with a bad manager? Okay, so another few minutes, another 20 seconds, then we'll close and I'll share the final results with you. Now, the purpose of these polls is just for you to also get an idea, because you've got other practitioners on here. And it's when we share that we realize that we are all facing similar problems, right? Maybe sometimes it may seem that, oh, maybe everybody else is not having this type of issue, but you can see from the responses that we are all having similar problems, or we've all had experienced similar issues that we're discussing here. All right. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. So 76% of you said yes, you've had to deal with bad managers, and 24% of you said no. All right, so maybe the 24% may have good insights as to maybe what things that they are doing in the organization that can be of help to us. So I've just shared the results to you. Okay, so now from the surveys, we've looked at the issue of bad managers. We've also looked at whether we've actually had to deal with some which 76% of you have said yes to. So now let's have a discussion about Mary and Mr. Jack. All right, so please, if you want to comment, just either raise your hand so I can see, or message in a comment so that I can see, and unmute you so that you can contribute. Please contribute. This is a roundtable discussion we're supposed to be discussing, so please contribute. All right, so if you'd like to first comment on this. So from the scenario I just shared of Mary and Jack issue, and you as the HR, what are the issues from those of us reading, and what are the issues that are what is your perception of as to how it's gotten to this point, right? Where we're now losing, people are resigning. It's not like people are not complaining to you, the HR. What are the issues? What is happening? Why do you think we've gotten here from the scenario that I read out? Anyone? You can put the comments in the chat. There's no right or wrong answer, HR. You are dealing with these issues all the time. Feel free to put your hand up. Let me see if there's any hands up, and I'll unmute you. Or I think some of you can unmute yourself. Just let me know. Anyone wants to contribute? Aha, Samuel. Okay. Go ahead, Samuel. Your observation.
Yes, hi, good
morning.
Yes, hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Anita, for this opportunity. From this scenario, we can tell that Jack is a problem. But then again, because Jack contributes to the whole, is indispensable. But then his people management skills is something that needs to be looked at. So clearly, the whole organization is not focusing on these people management skills. And I think it needs to be trained on people management skills. So that's my bit.
Yes. Thank you, Samuel. So very good point there. We all agree that Jack is a problem. And one of the key things that Samuel is highlighting is the fact that he lacks people management skills. So these issues have come about because he's lacking people management skills as one of the reasons here. Anybody else have a contribution? Yes, okay, you can speak, yes.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Mensa here. And from the scenario given, I think the issue started it didn't start with Mary. They had opportunity to interview other people that left the organization, and then they were told that it was Jack that was the problem. So I think the HR then did a mistake by not confronting Jack in the first place. Probably if they had dealt with that problem from the onset, they wouldn't have gotten subsequent people to lead organizations. So they could have tackled it from there, because the main purpose of this SS interview is to get views as to why people are leaving organization and then tackle those issues. So if the first person did and then prompted then HR that this is the reason why I'm leaving the organization, they could have escalated the issue, looked at the root causes, spoke, like probably had a personal interview or interaction with the manager, that's Jack, and then tell him the impact of his actions on the organizations and then the negative impact of his actions on the organizations. Then tell him why he needs to train himself probably in his people management skills and everything. And then from there, they will pick it up from there. Because if they had dealt with it from that point, I'm sure subsequent employees wouldn't have left the organization. So that's my view.
Thank you. Okay, so that was jam-packed. So Percy is saying that, first of all, the issue should have been addressed immediately it started. And she was making the point that the HR should have addressed Jack using the exit responses immediately to tackle the issue. And so not tackling the issue immediately it started is a basis for the issues. And then she made a point that, of course, from the scenario, we can tell that it's not just today that Jack started this issue. This issue has been going on for some time now. Do we agree? Do any more? So I'll bring the second. Do we agree with some of the points here? Now, you can still put your hands up if you want to contribute. Okay, so I've got Daniel. Okay, Daniel, unmute and share your thoughts.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Anita. My view, I see there is a trend. And so if we've had a number of staff leaving and through just one or two managers, in this scenario, it's Jack, what is happening in terms of the governance system for the company? And if he is the CEO or any of the relatives, then that tells that this is something that probably is going across the organization. So we need to look at the governance of the organization and then also push out some training for the managers in terms of protecting staff who we bring in into the organization.
Thank you, Daniel. So that was a good point. He's making a point that we need to look at the governance of the organization. We need to look at training, and we need to look at how we protect the employees. Okay. Now I want to pick up move to the next point, which is that Percy's made a point about saying the HR should have confronted Jack when this whole issue started. I want to ask, what could the HR have done? Assuming, I want to make it a bit more complex for you in saying that, assuming that this Jack is actually the CEO, right? Is the CEO of the company or the founder of the company? Because some of you are working in organizations where you have CEOs, established enterprises, and sometimes you're working in family-owned businesses and so on. So if it was the CEO, right? So that's the top of the leadership that was displaying this behavior that we just witnessed in the scenario with Jack. What can HR do? What can the HR do? Tess already said she should confront she should have confronted Jack. What are our thoughts on that? Kindly raise your hands and I will come to you. So, Daniel, did you want to make another contribution? Or I've not lowered your hand.
Yes, I think I have not lowered my hand.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Anyone want to say anything about the HR? What can the HR do? This is why we're having this conversation, because it sits with us, right? When employees leave, they feel we've let them down if we've not addressed. Go on, Daniel. Yeah,
I suggest trying to take out the data and sharing it with the CEO in a discussion that not necessarily puts him out as the bad person, because that he would certainly fight back or he'll be very resistant to it. But to have a discussion and to try and build a case for good governance, good governance in the organization, linking it to the return on investment for the company, and trying to build consensus with the other team managers, management team, to get them to go along the line of having a system that protects the staff and then stops or pushes the managers into trainings that take them out of this kind of situation, like going for unconscious bias training, like going for team building delegation, and even staff rights and of such, trying to push out such policies, and then trying to get the CEO to do this. So the buy-in from the CEO is going to help, especially if we can be linked to the return on investment.
Very good suggestions there. So some of the key ones that I picked is that sharing the information with the CEO using the exit data without necessarily, when we say that, we don't mean you go and say, Ama Mensah said, or, Mary said, but correlating the information and using the data to kind of communicate that, this is what we're getting from when people are leaving, is a suggestion that Daniel's making. And then putting the case across. And, I'm always saying, for me, putting the case across means if you want CEO's first point of notice is the bottom line, right? Sometimes we don't like to hear that, but they are business focused. So if you're going to put the case using an exit, you should also put the numbers of how much it's costing us to keep hiring people, to replace people, with like the cost of the time of managers. And we'll come to some of the issues that you can pick up to make up your business cases for addressing it. If it's the CEO or the owners, or any leadership, you want to absolutely get the buy-in by sharing that information with them about the importance of good governance, having a policy, and then of course we come back to this issue that was raised earlier about the training. All right. So I want to read some of the comments in the chat. So we have here, Krantima is saying, Jack has never been dealt with by the HR with regards to him, his people management skills. I believe with time, he's been made to feel that he's indispensable. Absolutely. So without records, he feels he is indispensable. Someone should have been shadowing Jack to learn from him, so he doesn't have all the knowledge in his head. This is very true, right? We create what we say, or we call demigods, when we let things sit in people's heads. And the best way to deal with that is through making sure that there are SOPs, right? There are SOPs for each department. Each role should have an SOP, so it doesn't sit in people's heads, so they don't feel they are indispensable. So if they leave, we've got the knowledge, right? We've got the knowledge base in our SOPs to be able to train people and get them to do the same thing. So yes, if people feel they have the knowledge, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a manager. It could be the IT. It could be anyone in a key role. They can also behave in this manner. And Michael is saying that Jack lacks leadership skills and would have to enroll in a leadership training in order to manage employees with the right kind of leadership. Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Ophelia is saying that the problem is obviously Jack. On the premise that he's said to be good at his job, the employer needs to make intentional strides to improving his people's skills. As much as the company regards him as an asset, he's now a liability creating asset and needs to, I like that, a liability creating asset, and needs to be cancelled. Otherwise, the company is slowly, quickly building up to ruining their goodwill, because as people leave, they give bad report, and eventually talent attraction becomes a problem. Very key. Your employer brand starts to dive, right? Very, very important here. And then Michael also adds, the attitude towards employees disengage them and would want to make them leave an organization regardless of the pay they are given. So now this is very important, and this year we hope that when we are doing the millennial survey, we'll have more of our Ghana HR practitioners responding, because sometimes we think our millennials are just interested in money. And a lot of the time, that's not the case. It's not that they want to be well paid, but they also want environments where they can thrive, right? Where they are not being treated in this manner. And some people would actually leave regardless of how much you're paying them, because this is stressful, right? So we need to bear that in mind. Sometimes we are perceiving that people will stay because of the pay. No, millennials, as we know, are not, their thought process is not the same as the baby boomers, right? Some of them will gladly go and sit at home for their peace of mind. So that means HR, our strategies have to change. Like we cannot ignore some of these issues. And then Miriam is saying that the HR should have trained on people management skills immediately she noticed this bad behavior. HR should engage him and put him on series of people management training that's coming from Christiana. So so these are all the things the HR can do, right? So basically from your own submissions, it means that there is something that the HR can do, right? So now we had Daniel give us some pointers on how we can get management buy-in. So I was asking him, how would HR get the management buy-in to address Jack's managerial issues? And I think we have touched on the key one, which is using the information, the data, right? The exits, the cost of having to replace people, the problem we are now having in the scenario. We learned that finding talent has now become a problem, and that before, when talent was available, the HR, you didn't have an issue, right? So probably you were not even motivated or pushed to address Jack's problem because you could always find replacements for Jack. But now in the scenario, we're told that people are not even applying internally when jobs become available in Jack's department. We're being told that people are not applying even to the role. So now you have a problem of finding talent, okay? So that's all part of the case that you would have to put together to try and get the buy-in, all right? And we were also saying that even if the owner is the owner of the business, HR still has to handle it, right? But I want us to discuss this bit a bit more because this one is not as easier said than done, all right? So some insights on how HR can handle it. When is the owner of the business or a relative of the owner, son, daughter, wife, friend of the business who is behaving in this manner? Can we suggest anything else outside of what others have already said on dealing with this one, as this one is a little bit more sensitive? The floor is open for contributions. Kindly raise your hands or you can put your comments in the comment section. Anyone on how, when it's the owner, how can HR handle it, all right? Because when it's the owner or a founder or a relative of the owner or the founder, sometimes there is a reluctancy to address the issue because it's rightly so to have the thought process that, well, it's the person's business. Am I going to lose my job? Are they going to listen? All these things play a role. But as I was saying, when employees leave because of a grievance or these types of issues and the HR doesn't help them to address it, they feel let down. And as someone has already said, it doesn't help our employer brand eventually. So any more suggestions on how we can deal with when it's the owner? Okay, I have a hand up. Okay, sure, go ahead, Persis.
Okay, with this one, I know it's quite difficult dealing with such issues, especially if the person is the owner, like the owner of the business. But I think you can speak to key stakeholders or key people in key management positions that you think are of influence to the owner. Then you present a report, as our brother said earlier on, that data from the exit interview, you present it and then tell them the negative impact or the cost such situation is having on the business, and then present your facts to them, and then give them the reason why you think the issue should be dealt with. I think when you bring in the stakeholders and everyone, I think even though the person is the owner of the company, the person still wants profit. and something that will harm the, or something that is increasing the profit of the business, obviously the person will give a ear to whatever you are saying. So I think that's one approach you can use.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Samuel. You wanted to add, you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, yes, please, Anita. So just like she said, what if bringing on board the stakeholders, the shareholders, and all those involved, and still the CEO is not listening? Because then again, what if it's more of a profit, orientation, more as it were than a people, management thing? How are you going to go about it? Because most of these people, yes, if the corporate governance system is working, whereby there's a 360 performance appraisal, and in some cases it's much easier. Let's not lie to us. These are real issues happening in private organizations and one-man business, where the data and everything is being shown, but still the CEO or the managing director of that company will not listen to the HR advice. So in such instances, it's quite difficult. Yeah.
This is a very, very good point. This is why I decided to pause on that one. It's a very big point. Well, one of the suggestions that come to my mind is that you may now have to resort to going to the NLC and getting compensation figures and coming to share with him or her to understand that, I always say, right, from the perspective as an arbitrator, I always say when everything is okay until something goes wrong, right? Then you really see the issue. So the fact that you're involved in a practice that is negative and it hasn't gone wrong, right? It's just biding you time to maybe solve the problem. But when it finally goes wrong, i.e. there will be that one employee who will not take it or who will decide to stand up for themselves, right? That is when all the regrets will come in. So one of the ways, if you find that given all the business cases and the points that people have made in how we can address this, is to go to the NLC, the court, that get the cost of what happens when people go on the grounds of unfair dismissal, because we do have a clause in the law that says that if you do things to make me have to resign, right, it's a form of unfair termination. So you can actually now look at litigation data to try to get the point across. If all the other methods that we know should influence, should work, it's not working. And in this instance, if you have like a good relationship with the board chairperson, I always find it's important to try and build relationship with the board chairperson, because they are the ones who the CEOs are usually engaging with. So if you have a good relationship, you can have an off the record, can you help me get this information across to the CEO? And they may be able to kind of find, depending on the type of person they are, to communicate with the CEO. But I think what I'm hearing is the confidence for HR to actually want to approach this is very important. And from the perspective of, for the good of the business, for the good of all of us, right? Should be the foundation. But yeah, if all your data and all your information on cost and doesn't work, you have to go and look for litigation information, maybe try and find other companies who fell foul to bad reputational damage. I think if you guys remember, some years back, we had this issue with, was it Mawako? Mawako, there's been a few. And I have to tell you, that company has never been the same since that whole reputational damage, where the manager, they poured some water or something on the employee and abuse, and it all came out in the news, and the impact it had on that organization. So maybe some of these external information may be good ways of finally pushing them to understand that, we need to work on this issue, right? Anybody else got any other suggestions on how you can deal with the owners to listen? That's the two that came to my mind. Any more? Oh, HR. Okay, so we can see that from the discussion that we had, there are reasons. So we're going to go on and start discussing some of these issues, right? So reasons for bad managers, we have definitely identified from the scenario that, does someone want to add something? Okay. We've definitely understood that, lack of managerial training, lack of managerial skills is a problem for Jack, right? And a lot of the time it is a, sorry, I think my internet cut me off for then. So I was saying that we know that from our discussion, we agreed that lack of managerial training was a problem. And other areas, and I guess you can speak to what some of you do or any additions to this. Other areas is usually transition support. So sometimes, not only are we not giving them training, but we're not giving them any transition support into coaching. So I'll give you an example. An example is I am friends with, Mary, and then a promotion comes along, right? Mary, John, Jack, we're all in a team, work together. A promotion comes along and I get the promotion, right? Now, all of a sudden, I've gone from being colleagues of Mary and Jack and Tom and whoever into being their boss, right? Into being their boss. And before I became their boss, we'll go home together, we'll have jokes, we'll sit in the canteen, we were colleagues, right? And now they have gotten familiar with me as colleague, and now I'm their manager, right? I'm now having to tell them what to do. I have to set their objectives. That transition psychologically, right? There's a psychological transition as well as job transition is key. We don't coach new managers on this. Even when we hire people in, we should still be trying to do some of these transitional coaching. For them to get to do that transition from, okay, I'm no longer a colleague, how do I feel about it? And some of these things are soft skills that we're looking at, are self-reflective. They're not tangible, like they are learning a computer skill, right? But they do need to have those coaching reflective moments to help them transition into these roles. We don't do it. So now I am finding it difficult to deal with Mary. Mary knows that we were colleagues. Mary keeps coming to work late. She's doing her submissions late. She's putting it, and she's doing it because she feels we were friends and I can't really tell. And actually, I am also feeling quite challenged to actually pull her out because I feel away, right? Because we were friends. We still are friends. I still want her to like me. I also know I need to be a manager. This is serious dilemmas, right, for new managers. So HR has to have a transitional support plan for managers, whether you are recruiting them in for roles, whether you're promoting them into new roles, right? It's very important that for even every level they go is a different level. So maybe I was supervisor. Now maybe in your hierarchy, you've moved me to a manager status, which is higher than the supervisor, transition. I was manager, now you've moved me into senior management. I'm now in the leadership, I'm at the senior level, transition. So this transition coaching, guys, I cannot emphasize it enough, right? Throughout my career, this particular issue is a big issue, as well as the training skills, all right? We need to coach them into transition to be able to adjust their thinking, adjust their behavior, supported to be able to do so, to be able to deal with their colleagues who they've now become their managers, to be able to discipline them, to be able to appraise them. It's not easy, right? So imagine when we don't do this, they do what they think or what they've experienced, right? Any points on this? I'll put all the points here, then I guess people can comment. Then promotion based on subject matter and expertise. That sometimes, we heard in Jack's scenario that he's very good at his job and he has all the knowledge. So over the years, people are being promoted on this, and we're not really looking at their interpersonal skills, or even, as I just said, those two first points are not applying, all right? So we've got these technical, mechanical leaders who are not necessarily managing people well. Reliance on new managers to rely on their instincts to manage. We'd assume you've just been made manager, get on with it, right? And, as we have all agreed, that's not as simply said as that. Often left to their own devices, there's no there's no rules, right? They're supposed to do their own thing. Some managers haven't even had training on giving feedback. They don't even know how to do appraisals, right? But we've just left them to their own devices, and employees are the ones who suffer under these. Most managers is based on how they've been managed in the past. So that's what they've got as a basis, right? How someone has managed them. So if you've managed them bad, if they've had experience of bad management and that's what they know, that's how they're going to come and obviously manage your people, right? So these are some of the reasons we're saying, you know, it equates to bad management. HR does not address the issue. We've seen in the issue with Jack and Mary in our scenario that HR was very aware of it. Management, everybody's aware of it, but nothing is not being addressed, right? Which has now led to us losing talent. People are leaving, they're resigning, right? Leadership develop blind spots, and this happens especially when the manager is seen as doing what. And actually, let me say that sometimes it can even be down to the employees, because in the past I've had at least a few companies, especially in sales, where we had very good sales performers, right? Meaning that they were bringing huge volumes of money into the company, but they had bad attitudes. You know, they had bad attitude. They were stressfully. What was the point? Somebody made something about liability. That comment there. They were just liabilities, but at the same time they were assets. As you know, and it was a nightmare to address. They were breaking rules in the long run. Has put the case across that the way they're going in the long run, the reputational damage and the cost and that they are leading us into, it's not worth the fact that they perform well. Either they're going to rectify themselves or advise themselves. Sometimes you have to go, because in some of these companies, this particular company I'm referring to were serving the financial services or the huge clients accounts on the financial services where clients of this company. And these particular individuals, because they brought in, we're talking millions of pounds. It was like, well, you know, yes, this and that. But of course, you know, it takes a lot as an HR to challenge, right? We had tribunal cases, all kinds of stuff. It wasn't easy to get the leadership to see that as this goes on, if you weigh up the assets against the liability, are we really carrying assets? Okay. So when the leadership have a blind spot, I've experienced it. It's a nightmare, but you've still got to you've got to keep pushing to change that whole scenario for employees. All right, and then lack of interpersonal skills. Okay, so does anyone want to add anything on here of some of the reasons, or can identify any of the reasons? Do you think some of the way that you're promoting, you've dealt with managers may have created some of these, or some of these as a result? Kindly raise your hands to contribute. Okay. Okay, so I'm just trying to. Okay, any comments on the reasons for the managers? Okay, all right. So let's move on. So these are some of the reasons, and then you realize that when you're discussing this, characteristics also come. So maybe some of you who in a poll had said you've not actually experienced bad managers, or you're not really having to deal with any of this. Maybe these characteristics may help, because sometimes defining can also, because you can also have the managers that are relatively okay, but they may have some of these characteristics that, because it's not evident, it could be missed. All right. So we're saying characteristics like micromanaging people. You know, micromanaging people for me is one of the biggest execution of talent. You know, like you're literally just shutting the talent down for innovation, for ideas, suffocation, right? Because if you want talent to excel, you've got to challenge talent. You've got to give them space. You've got to learn. A mistake is learning and growth, right? But you have managers where it's micromanaging, which is exhausting, right? It doesn't help with our talent, but that's usually a sign. And micromanaging, not just the where it becomes nitpicking, it becomes stressful. Every little thing you know, the managers on you, right? That's one of the characteristics. Petty and spiteful, very little things. You know, if you're giving feedback, you need to give example and explain the reason for your feedback, right? Whether it's positive or a criticism, right, or a negative, you need to explain it. Don't, they're just very petty and spiteful. No feedback, right? No feedback, and then randomly you'll be having a conversation and it'll be like, oh yeah, you know, you're just not doing this, and you're thinking, when did this happen, right? No feedback, just suddenly they can just come to HR, well, this person's not doing well, I want them to be terminated, or I want them on a PIP or something like that, but they've not given any form of feedback, right? Verbally abusive, right? And this is classified, ladies and gentlemen, under our whole policy around bullying, right? Bullying, harassment, and all of that. This verbal abuse sits under there, which we know in our act is not acceptable, all right, to verbally abuse people, but some of them do, right? Not listening, sidelining, especially if they've got it in for you, right? Blaming game, right? They also steal the spotlight. I think, was it last year or the year, we had a client where we were trying to develop talent. Yes, we're trying to develop talent. In fact, the organization had issue where it was not getting people coming up. You know, they wanted to move the supervisors up and migrate them, but then bring other people into position. But it was not happening. So I queried, and the employees were like, well, you know, we can't bring suggestions, we can't bring ideas, because these particular leaders, so it's an organization I was assigned to on one of my ILO projects, and because their view was that the manager, if they bring an idea and it's a good idea, the manager felt threatened, right, by the idea, the suggestion, so you shut it down, dismiss it, sideline it. So they were all just there, not bringing anything. And then if they also do well or do something well, they will steal the spotlight. So it's not saying, you know, my team have done well. You know, as a good manager, you win together, you lose together, you celebrate. That's not what they will do. They will take the spotlight. All right. So are you having managers like that? Where have you engaged the employees to see where you're thinking innovation is not coming because maybe the managers feel threatened by suggestions from subordinates, or even their subordinates who do well, right? Favoritism, overcritical, and dismissive. Some of these are some of the characteristics, and some of these are the characteristics that HR needs to open their eyes. And then when employees are feeding back, you need to be looking out for some of these keywords, all right? Anybody wants to add anything to this list? Kindly do so. I'm just going back to see if there's any comments that I should read. Okay. So any of these characteristics coming into mind for your managers that you think you need to address? This is a good indicator. Okay. So how do we stop losing talent? All right. So from the discussion we're having, we already agree that managerial training and skills is important. And for me, there's 4 that I want to highlight to you. Emotional intelligence should be part of that training. Giving and receiving feedback should be part of that training, outside of the other key functions of the moving into management we know. Self-assessments should be part. By self-assessments, we mean we are assessing their leadership and management styles, and we are using that, right? Sorry, we are using that to as part of the development. And then this empathetic management I'm bringing up. If you remember last year somewhere when I did the HR network thing, I mentioned to you that there are changes, right, that have come in from COVID, right? And now one of the key things that came out all over the world when COVID was happening was the identification that managers were not very empathetic managers, right? Because the pandemic really required it. So right now, one of the key trends and championing that HRs are doing is to try to develop managers to be empathetic, right? Being an empathetic manager allows you to be able to see things a little bit more from your employees' perspective. It allows you to be able to coach, build better relationship with them. So if you've not started looking at empathetic management styles for training for your managers, I would recommend that that becomes part of, you know, the training that you put together for them. But that's very important. Executive coaching is important. I mentioned the point about transition, right? So you can have the transition element as a program internally, or you have someone do it, but they should have executive coaches, very good ones. And the whole idea of these executive coaches is to get them to reflect on how they are managing their people, their emotions, and all of those things. And we may think it's, you know, oh, no, but it's very important. It's very effective, right? Providing the transition support to new managers. I cannot stress that enough. It's really important. Create an opportunity for observation and feedback by direct managers. I know somebody mentioned the 360. I've got it here. Feedback on management and management style. Are you having this in any of your surveys, in your employee engagement? Are you actually having a segment in your employee engagement surveys where you're asking for specific feedback on management styles, right? That's very important. Observing great managers is also important. HR has to be very proactive in this situation, to be honest, in order to really manage this, all right? Train managers on compliance and consequences. You know, when we're talking, I think it was Daniel who mentioned governance. You know, governance is very, very important that people understand the law and how it affects. Because I feel sometimes we know the law, right? We are trying to get them to behave, but are we actually engaging them just to give them a layman's understanding of the consequences? Are we putting in enough of our own initiatives to let them understand why we need to kind of improve on how we're handling our people? That's an important one. Make people management part of the appraisal. I've always said, as a consultant, all the performance management systems, right? Not just the appraisal that have worked has been ones where you link the variable reward to people management, because now they want to sit up and make sure that they're doing the right thing, because the output of their appraisal are linked to either their bonus or their increases, right? If you want to really show that. Sorry, today I'm not having luck at all with my technology. So I was saying that if you want to really show, that, you know, good management is very important, you should link it to their performance so that you're showing that this is important. So we even want to measure you on it, right? If you want to see results, if you want to see people really sitting up, you have to link it to their variable pay or something, right? Celebrating good managers is also a very good way of communicating this culture of good management, good leadership, right? Is celebrating managers. At the end of the year, we usually do employee of the year, this and that. How much rewards are we acknowledging managers who are performing well? Maybe you need to think about that, right? Feedback on exit results to management. We should focus on the areas that deals with the management. It should become a team effort. So if they are scoring, if you're using a 5-point scale and they are scoring 2, there should be a goal that, okay, guys, we need to get this number to 3 or 4, right? That is a team effort, a management team effort, you know. And so those who are letting the side down will now know that they have to sit up, right? You need to find creative ways of communicating the exits to make it even like a competition that, no, we're not doing well, we need to do better, right? In your HR briefings. Include management styles and engagement surveys. It's really important that you include management styles in engagement survey. You need to get the feedback. I feel that when you do the surveys, is the people speaking back to you. These are anonymous surveys. You don't need people's names or anything that identifies them if you want to have better results, right? But is the information that people have fed back, and you are now going to collate and write a report and share. So it's not you who is saying it, it's the people who are feeding back, and it's very powerful. So make sure you have that element in your engagement survey or in whichever surveys you're doing. Discipline, bad behavior. I know Persis made the point and others made a point about the fact that if when this situation happened with Jack and Mary, if they had dealt with it immediately, maybe it would have squashed it and would have built this demigod of Jack. So we have to find a way to make sure that we're disciplining. We need to address the talent grievances, because we can tell that Mary and the others are leaving because they've actually raised the issue and HR is not addressing it. So they've just been left with no choice but to leave. Okay, so we have to address the grievances when they come, and we've talked about lots of different ways of doing that. And then investing in developing managers. So my suggestion here is that when we are doing these trainings, right, or you do your training needs analysis and you take them on this training, good training providers should be able to draw from those assessments and things to come to be part of their PDPs, right? So it's continuous development. Developing management skills and leading people is not a classroom one-day event, right? It's a continuous something. So HR needs to see how you plug in with your own internal support to the external support you bring in. But they should be able to bring a lot of that information into PDPs, right? And if that's not happening, I'm always saying, what is your LO? What is the answers to your LO questions? If you are not able to draw external training back into PDPs or back into internal development program, are we getting return on investment? So that's something to think about. You need to invest in the management development. I think we all agreed from the beginning that Jack needed that. And that's, if we have a Jack, we need to deal with Jack. So why is this important? Well, we've discussed it, right? But I'm just highlighting some of this. Business perspective, you know, we had people mentioned about, I like that one, assets being liabilities, right? So that's the business risk, okay? Reputational and employer brand damage. Somebody said it in the comments. They said, you know, as people leave, they share their experiences and it becomes a bad image for your organization. Nobody wants to work there, right? Loss of talent, cost, recruitment, the stress, you know, of recruiting is not easy, right? Cost of the consistently hiring, and these are the ones that you use for your bottom line argument. And then the talent gap. Even now we are told in the scenario that people don't even want to go and work in this department, who work in the company, who even probably know what he's like, and you could say, well, they may be a bit more understanding. They don't want to work with him. So we have a talent gap, meaning that in this particular department, we are struggling to fill jobs, okay? Internally and externally, we are struggling to find talent for people like him too, because of the scenario going on, okay? And then HR will be held responsible that you can't find talent, but actually it's not you, right? So we've got to address that issue. And then of course, litigation, we're gonna end up in labor commissions or employment tribunals, etc., depending on which jurisdiction you are in, to have to address these things under harassment, bullying, and all sorts of laws against this, right? We don't want that. So these are some of the, somebody mentioned about the stakeholders, we talked about the looking at it from the profit loss sense, we talked about shareholders. Somebody made a point on that. These are some of the reasons that you could be using to try and get the point across that we need to develop our managers, right? From the very top down to wherever the level ends, okay? And then the people perspective is resignations, loss of talent, okay? And we already heard mentioned in the comments that they'll leave, right? And regardless of how much money you're paying them, okay? You know, employees where the leadership is good and they have the support and they can develop in that, you'll be amazed how understanding and they can be for you. But where they are suffocating, they will resign, right? Low morale. So sometimes I say that, you know, when people start doing absenteeism and things like that, you know, I always train my officers, investigate before you jump to conclusion. You need to understand what is happening here, right? And a lot of the time, sometimes low morale, demotivation, stress, absenteeism is all because of the manager. They're having issues with the manager and they don't feel they can reach out. So HR has to make sure that it's asking the right questions, right? Job satisfaction it becomes a problem because, you know, who wants to come to work and be miserable? You know, you come to work and, you know, the minute you get to the the gates of your employment, your spirit is dampened, you're depressed, you enter and it's like, oh gosh, another day. That's not a nice emotion for anybody, right? That's low job satisfaction. In that is, doesn't matter what benefits, whatever. Is some people love their job, right? They love their job, and so they are staying. But the satisfaction of being in your organization is a nightmare. So it is affecting. That's the element of the low satisfaction they're experiencing, right? And then the psychological impact it can have on employee, especially when you have the likes of Jack. We were told he can be abrasive, he can be abusive, he's dismissive. These kind of things affect people's personalities, it affects their confidence. You know, it's not nice, right? So as HR, we've got to figure it out. It's not acceptable to just say, well, you know, it's the leadership, or well, I can't. We have to find, even if it's small steps, to addressing this issue, because not only are we losing talent, you know, it's also how we're making our talent feel, right? How we're making them feel when they feel. I mean, you know, one of the things I always, I remember in my early career, I didn't want is for someone to just feel like, well, you just didn't do anything, right? Even if I couldn't do anything, I must try to, the little that I can, to try and solve the problem and make the persons understand. It's not a nice feeling. I don't know about you guys as practitioners, but that is not a nice feeling when it feels like your inaction has had a negative impact on somebody, right? And it's not easy for us because we have to deal with so many things, but honestly, the psychological impact of when we fail to do things. I think I shared a post with you guys some weeks ago on an experience after an NLC case that I was involved in, and the feeling of just seeing this employee in such despair, and it was like the HR has caught, it was something else. I've never experienced that in my life, and I just remember thinking I wouldn't want someone to feel that way about me, you know. So I'm pleading with you that I know it's not easy, but that's what makes our profession so rewarding, right? That we're dealing with the people and we can solve some of these problems, okay? So now, before we go on to HR actions, I have a poll for you, all right? So in this poll, I'm asking you, do you need to improve the way you handle bad managers, right? So yes or no. I'm launching the poll. It should come on your screen just before we wrap up. Do you need to improve the... Sorry, I'm having my connectivity is a nightmare. Let me launch the poll again. So I'm asking, do you think you need to improve? I don't know if my poll launched. Okay, so I'm just launching that poll again because my screen went. So just yes or no, 1 minute. Do you need to improve the way HR handles bad managers? So the poll should have shown up on your screen right now. Do you think you need to improve, having kind of heard the discussion we just had this morning concerning Jack and Mary and some of the points that we have been making? Do we think we need to, do you think you need to do any improvements there? Yes or no? So 1 minute, 30 seconds is gone. So as of now, we've got 93% of you are saying yes, and 7% of you are saying no. That's good. I want the 7% to share with us what they are doing. That's going to be the next question before we go on to actions. Okay. So 94% of you are saying yes, you need to improve, and 6% of you are saying no. So I'm going to stop the poll and I'll share the results. So, yeah. So I'm just sharing the results you see on your screen. So 94% of you saying that, yes, you think you need to improve on how you're handling bad managers. And only 6% of you are saying that you don't need it. You're doing fine. You don't need to do anything on that. Okay. All right. Now, before we go on, does anyone want to share how or some of the things that you've been doing to address this issue in your organization? Can we have some inputs as to some of the activities or initiatives that you've been doing in your organization to address this issue, just to give other people some ideas before we move on? Okay. Sorry. Any answers to that? What are some of you doing to address this issue? Because some of you are doing stuff. Kindly raise your hands or put the comments. Okay, I've got a hand raised. Okay, Samuel, go ahead.
Yeah, so Anita, just like you rightly put, in today's modern HR trends, as part of the performance management system, in our companies as part of the GO plan or during the performance contract, there is a component for people management, irrespective of your department. Definitely for the people and culture department, people management will have a big weightage, but the other department, yes, there's that weightage for people management. So that is a way to, as it were, assess, bad managers. And another thing we do is also to recognize good leaders, So every quarter we have an activity that Value Champions, where, we try to recognize, Value Champions every quarter, where we recognize, good leaders for the exemplary leadership and what they did, so unique within their team. And the last thing we also do is the 360 feedback. So, getting feedback or information as to how each and every senior manager is faring. So the 360 feedback, quarterly recognitions, and the people management as part of the GO plan setting.
Okay, Simon, can I ask, just so that people who are maybe thinking about it now, just let's take it to the reward, the linking to the appraisals and reward. How do you do it? Does the outcome of the appraisal link to the reward? How do you do it? Is there a percentage of the appraisal that goes?
So the award is quite separate from the GO plan. Yes, the GO plan is also assessed every quarterly, where there are reviews, formal reviews every quarter. Yes, so to some extent it is linked to it, but then again, during the quarterly activities, it is something that is visible, that comes up.
I'm not having a good day today with my internet connection, so sorry. Okay, so you were saying that the quarterly and it's and then so what, you collate all the quarterly results for the full annual results and then reward.
Yeah, so like I said, there is a formal feedback section every quarter based on the GO plan. So it is not only linked to that, but it should be something that is visible by all. So during the quarter, we have a committee members that look out for, so each department, we throw it to them to nominate and specific on an achievement, which is tied to good leadership. Yes, based on that, the committee will then sit and review the nominations. Then a final winner is selected. Yes, so there's a committee to review all nominations.
Okay. And then you mentioned about the 360. Like, how do you do the 360? Do you just get the information from just the subordinates, or do you do it for cross management? You know, other people they may manage not directly but indirectly. Do you get from their peers, or have you just isolated it to one area? How does your 360 work?
Yeah. So it's 360 from bottom up and top down, and it's been managed by head office. So it's quite anonymous. So they will then come up with a result, which is shared with the people and culture lead. Then based on that, the committee also sits on that to, nominate the overall winner.
So does any, like, let's assume in a 360, if you had like any areas of improvement, right? So maybe you got some feedbacks that were not as great for some of them. Does that translate into development activities, or like how do you address that?
Sure. So that also helps us in our IDPs, the feedback we get from the 360. So if you're having the IDPs, factor those, areas to be worked on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Samuel. Anyone else want to share some of what you're doing? That was really good. Thank you. It's really insightful. Anyone else want to share? Anyone wants to share what else you're doing? Perhaps there's no right or wrong, guys. We have to share. We have to share practice. Of course, you learn so much, right, from each other. Anyone else want to share something? I've got a comment here, so whilst I'm reading it, please put your hands up and share what you're doing. It can, every insight helps us all as we're listening. So Pearl is saying that people management is an integral part of the KPI of every line manager. Managing people, handling difficult conversations, etc., are programs that are on the annual training calendar. So she's saying that's what they do. So in her organizations, people management is part of the KPI of every line manager. So they have to address that on as the part of their KPIs. And then she also says that managing people, handling difficult conversations, etc., are programs that are on the annual training program. So in her organization, they actually have this on their annual training program. And then line manager performance is assessed during our biannual engagement survey. So they are also assessing the line managers when they do their biannual engagement survey. So in their engagement survey as well. So that's three things there that Pearl has also adding it as part of the KPIs for all line managers, having an annual calendar that actually deals with managing people, handling different conversations, etc. And then, of course, having a line management and performance assessment as part of the engagement survey. Thank you, Pearl. So she put that there. So if you don't want to speak and you want to put your what you're doing in your organization in the chat, please do, and I will read it out. Do we have any more to share concerning what we're doing in our organization? Gosh, there's so many of you. Do you want to share what we're doing? Just share. So my internet Zoom is upsetting. Okay, so we'll move on to close. So from the discussion, I'm hoping that you've taken a lot out of the conversation. And as always, HR has to have some actions because that's the whole purpose of us meeting today. So someone is saying that we provide tools to staff to ensure feedback, including engagement survey. They also have a whistleblowing policy and then unconscious bias training, right? So that's what Daniel is saying that his organization do. They provide tools to staff to ensure feedback, including employee surveys, so staff can feedback through employee surveys. They also have a whistleblowing policy, so that's basically meaning that if they're not happy about something, there's a policy that tells them how they go about raising issues. And then unconscious bias training, which is also something that they're offering. So that's very good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so we've gotten some ideas, and we can see that some of our practitioners are already doing things, right? I'm sure some of the things we're talking about, some of you are doing as well. Do still share in the comments, and I'll read them if you do before we exit. Okay, so in coming to the final element of this is now looking at what should be your next action. Okay, so we've been talking about this scenario, we've discussed some of the points, some of you have contributed, thank you so much. And now what should we be thinking about as we go away, right? For those of you who have exit interviews in place, you're already doing it. But for those of you who don't, or even if you do, you may want to review your exit data. If you don't have a managerial section in your exit data, you may want to add it. And then you may want to report the exit data. Now we're saying that, you can put a case together to try and address it. So if you're now thinking, okay, we probably need to address this by looking at developing our managers, you need to put a business case to get the budget, etc. You may want to start by using your exit data. If you haven't been collecting your exit data and you really want to take this on, you could always try to engage with some of the past employees to help you gather some data by filling in your exit. Some of them probably will, if you still have their contact, some won't. If not, then you obviously need to implement this there. If not, if that's something that you can't do, you're going to implement exit, but you want information quickly, then of course you can always do a survey, right? Following this, you can put together a survey, focusing on this, asking questions about leadership, management, and all of that, and put it to employees. And that information you could use as a basis to try to see whether you have a problem or how you can put a case, if you do, to try to solve the problem. All right, so action these are some of the actions you should be thinking about. You may want to assess the management styles, right, of your line managers, right up to the very top. So you may want to look at assessment tools or assessment type to kind of really understand their leadership styles and the way that they're managing. So that may be something that some of you may want to consider doing. All right, you may even want to incorporate assessment as part of your promotion or your recruitment strategy. Assess training needs, right? If you're going to assess the training needs, so assuming from this conversation, you're like, okay, I kind of know we have a few managers we can deal with, and you want to now identify the type of training you think you need. If you're not going to do your cover or the core areas of the training we know people need to do on this, then you want to assess their needs. You need to assess the needs. I'm saying that you should use the algorithm approach to this. It helps you to get more specifics as to the needs, as to just asking people, what training do you think you need, which is sometimes not the most objective way of finding out. But if you use the algorithm approach, you should be able to get to some of the key areas you need to look at. Provide training for managers. So if you go back and do some of these exercises and you realize that, okay, yeah, we do have gaps here, it's now about providing the training. And I always want to suggest that I always think that a good training mix is important. That's where you have both external, internal, you mix up the different ways in which people are learning, from the classroom to coaching, from self-reflection. Like, let's mix it up so that they get a full holistic training and not just this kind of one-way approach, which sometimes they go and they listen, it lasts just as long as the sessions do. Try and always go for the training that cascades back into PDPs and back into the organization that they can carry on improving, right? Because it's continuous professional development. So look at your training for the managers and how you're going to make sure that it's consistent and it's ongoing, right? So you need to look at internal training programs for managers, which are a bit more customized, tailored to your organization, and then maybe some of the external ones, including the coaching, right? Is what I'm saying, okay? And then, as for this coaching, for example, with the sessions that we run on our moving into management, etc., we have that element, but it's coming from the HR element of the coaching. The other side of the coaching is the executive coaches, and your executive coaches who are specialist coaches. They are, especially when you're really dealing with the senior levels. Sometimes they are having slightly more stubborn personalities, right? So you need the executive coaches that are able to kind of have experience to kind of tackle that. So you have the coaching at two levels, from the HR perspective, where we are coaching them on managing the people, understanding our appraisals and performance, and really getting them to get that. And then you have that personal leadership management coaching, which comes from the coaching executives. Okay, so in each case, you could look at how you as the HR or your HR can look at some of the internal and then what the externals will be. But the coaching in those two aspects is very important. And then HR briefings and coaching sessions. Are you doing them, HR? Have you crafted your own sessions, right? In the past, when I engage with some of you, I tell you that I used to do the vital few, right? Even with my officers and staff on field now, they are engaging with the managers, they're in meetings. You have to have HR briefings and coaching sessions. And the way, when I was doing the vital few, I would do is bring the problem. So you may have had an issue, you bring it as a scenario, get the managers, just like we've been doing here, to talk about it. How would you handle this? What are the issues? You need to coach them, you need to brief them, you need to have this session as a session where they can kind of share what is happening. And this takes a while, but I know that you're all very good practitioners, and if you put your mind, you can create that relationship where your managers see you as the HR coach to them, like supporting them on that people handle, because it's not every day you can keep sending them on trainings out. You've got to learn that internal engagement as a leader to be able to grasp their attention and their respect, to be able to coach them on some of these things. All right. So what is your HR briefing and coaching? If you already have this, those of you already doing this, is there other ways that maybe you can enhance and bring a little bit more of this management and leadership style elements that we're discussing into it? And then, as we've already said, include people management in management appraisals, link it to variable pay and rewards, recognition. Let's give management awards. Let's recognize good managers, right? When we recognize them, let's emphasize the characteristics that make them good managers. So encourages other managers to want to aspire to obviously win these awards and also know what makes a good manager. All right, so very important, this whole linkages stuff. It really works. All right. Okay, so to close up, if you are wanting to develop internally, these sessions that we do are internal. We don't really run these public trainings anymore. We prefer to work with the teams. So if you do have teams or managers and you wanted to sample our training, this is the ones that we do concerning this particular topic, is the managing people for the first time, moving into management, that's the transitional coaching. HR for non-managerial people is a very important one. And this has to be in non-HR language, right? Because if you do this session with HR language, it goes above their heads. Giving and receiving feedback, emotional intelligence, which sits into these two as well, but you can have it as a separate if that's where you think, no, we need to really work on our emotional intelligence. And then also the introduction to employment labor law for managers, all right? So these are the ones. And of course, if you want help to put together your internal programs or programs that you want to plug in, that you can get us to help you with that from the consultant